This video is meant to be a helpful aid along your journey. I will talk about how others are our mirrors and how this effect can be used for healing. But first, I found that it's important to touch on the ego a bit, because the mirroring work is not possible unless one can come to understand one's mind and begin the work of softening, opening, and accountability. And to get a more comprehensive understanding of the ego, check out my video titled Ego, Free Will, and Catalyst. In the West, we tend to think that the ego is all things bad, and that ego is just selfishness, arrogance, and narcissism. But that's only some aspects of ego, and those are the furthest end of the personality spectrum. In truth, we all have an ego, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. And simply put, the ego is the self that's derived from fears, desires, insecurity, and shame, developing a sense of self. Some individuals' experience of the self are just more overinflated and more self-serving than others. It all depends on how deeply they've met themselves, their unhealed mental and emotional wounds, how honest and accountable they are, and their level of awareness and relationship with the impulse to survive. I also sometimes like to refer to the ego as the rejected self, but to understand this, I'll have to elaborate. You've come to this plane of existence in order to experience separation, polarity, and to make choices without an understanding of where you came from and why you are here. As a portion of consciousness, you begin to experience your individuated self. As a baby, child, young adult, and so on, you have come to a set of balances in regards to the way you relate to others and life. Because the creation and because others are seen and experienced as separate from you, you go about developing your sense of self by way of that which says, fear, love, accept, reject, self, other. This individuated self manifests a personality that's also derived from the collective and family consciousness that was imposed on you. But when your sense of self is a fear-driven, insecure, trivial, unfulfillable ego, then how you relate with others, with the creation, and with the self is but a shell of who you truly are. We can call this protective shell the persona, or the word person is also ironically fitting. Through the many surprises, challenges, blunders, and evaluations, the personality is distilled, configured, and formed. And so it is an inevitable result of part of the process of survival mode and conditioning to develop a kind of shell. This shell is not a real shell, of course, but rather made of beliefs about the self, others, and life, and is enlivened and strengthened by energy. It's essentially an entity, not real. This shell seems to ward off energies and events that seem to overwhelm the being, which can inadvertently produce a sense of rejection. The rejection is not necessarily so much from one to the other, but from deep within one's own experience. Over time, this personality shell is further refined and grows more substantial and more convincing. Unbeknownst to you, you've essentially entered a container of separation by way of minimization, constriction, and rejection upon rejection. And in that container, one plays a game with oneself, whereby one is a victim, unworthy, isolated, finite, and perishable. The game of the separate self. The game of the personality shell. This self is given the job of staving off the attitudes, behaviors, and offerings of people and life that are considered to be too much for the mind to take in, process, and usefully deal with. And this is understandable, for it is the impulse for survival. What aspect of you constantly sees everything through the lens of survival? That sense of self that you worked so hard towards developing, of course. But is it really necessary anymore? How about when the predominant layers of the personality were created from past experiences that no longer exist? And these layers of personality command and navigate your life experience, journey, and destiny. The personality shell, which overlays the true you, was created by surviving or thriving within the family belief system and traits. Then, as a young entity, you extend your circle of relating and development to that of the community and the collective consensus. Then further conditioning begins to take place and take shape, dealing with the self, thus the energy shell, which increasingly comes to be associated with who you are, is further challenged, and more refinements to this protective entity are made. To be liked is a matter of survival. To be perceived as normal or down to earth is a matter of survival. To avoid saying or doing something that might make you a target of shaming is a matter of survival. Making choices that might get you praise, or to avoid the so-called experience of failure in a competitive, image-driven, wounded, shame-based society is a matter of survival. By the time you are a young adult, this armor has been crafted in a way that reflects the demands and events that have communicated to you in a slew of ways as being mandatory for your survival, self-expression, and ability to succeed in a complex social environment. You make alterations and fine tweaks until you find balance. That finely tuned self is always being challenged when faced with behaviors and events that are unanticipated and unknown. But at some point, after beginning the process of knowing oneself and seeing one's patterns, the questions arise. Do I just continue to be a collection of impulses, fight, flight, grasp onto, and other demands that contribute to a perceived sense of security which develops a sense of self? Do I just continue to build upon this protective mechanism, the illusory self, or do I begin to build upon the true self? Do I continue to build upon the idealized and idolized self, always floating upon the surface of comfort and consensus reality? Or do I dive deep into the ocean of being, the ocean of wonder, the ocean of consciousness? It can all begin with the most basic question: is this really what life is all about? Then one starts to realize that there is far more to life than just self-preservation and self-maintenance. You begin to feel like you are more than just an effect, and that you didn't just come here to play along. You begin to feel that you are called to a sense of purpose that is more than just survival and protection of identity. You begin to feel yourself as something truly alive and vibrant within a container, on the cusp of breaking free from this illusory threshold. Waking up to who you are requires letting go of who you imagine yourself to be. Alan Watts. Now let's talk about polarity. There are always three choices presented before a being: the path of negative polarity, the path of positive polarity, and the sinkhole of indifference. Examples of how polarity plays out are found in many things, such as chemistry, magnetism, or electricity. With electricity, polarity refers to the direction of current flow in an electrical circuit, essentially designating a positive and negative. In a circuit, electrons flow from the negative terminal to the positive terminal. This concept is crucial for understanding how electricity behaves and ensuring proper connections dealing with electricity. Electricity is the flow of electric charge, which can be positive or negative or neutral. Relating this to the self and to your incarnation, thousands of times a day, you are faced with behaviors, situations, and events where the polarities are presented before you. And to do any work in consciousness, then a polarity must be chosen: positive, negative, or indifference. Note, indifference is not the same as wisdom-based neutrality. I'll explain. The negative polarity seeks in service to self at the expense of others. These people desire control and power. Their toolkit has an assortment of options, fear, hate, violence, manipulation, deception, control, and infringement on the free will of others. The positive polarity seeks in service to others to help uplift and support all beings. The positive polarity works with understanding, compassion, forgiveness, acceptance, and honoring another's free will. The positive being also does the work to heal oneself so that they can be the best versions of themselves for themselves and for all others to enjoy. The positive being knows that when unhealed, it's not possible to be as present, loving, and supportive as one can be for others and for the self. And the third choice can be referred to as the sinkhole of indifference. This chronic condition of non-polarity is like unto a gravity well of avoidance and comfort. What is this avoidance of working with one's catalyst and challenges? What is this apathy, this sleep, this addiction to distraction, this love of the dream and remaining in a state of fantasy, almost as if one does not wish to face the self and begin the journey of waking up? You begin the incarnation with a flame, and if this flame is not fed, the motivation and inspiration begin to fade, and souls may then find themselves in a stagnant state. This state is brought about by peer pressure, which influences one to believe that the replication of others' behaviors and others' beliefs seems to be the best way forward. The state of indifference can also be brought about through trauma that causes a being to constrict out of fear or shame and retreat to numbness or even denial. The road I took to positive polarity, freedom, and alignment is not one that I would recommend. It was the path of addiction. But as painful, humiliating, and damaging as it was, in a twisted way it became my greatest liberator, teacher, refiner, and light. Or it could have very well been my greatest prison, penitentiary warden, psychological poison, desolator, and darkness. It all depends on how you use the momentum and alchemical components of your experiences. It all depends on what lens you choose to view your catalyst and experiences with: fear or love, ignorance or understanding, victimhood or accountability. In my past, I lost everything due to addiction, was homeless, broken on every level: mind, body, and at times even spirit. But what the traumatic experiences of addiction, loss, and unbearable shame did for me was humbled me. It annihilated how I saw myself. It revealed my mind, my protective armor, my shadows, my life traps. And at some point, after arriving again and again to a state of despair, I finally turned to my personality and said, "Ego, I thank you for always doing your best from your level of awareness and your capacity to try and protect me or attempt to get me what you thought I wanted. But you can only work with an antiquated system developed by fear and desire, in which even many of the things you believed were good for me were born of shame, self-rejection, and constriction around protecting that which may not have needed your protection after all. I thank you, young and tenacious ego, but it's time I start to release you and proceed forward, working from the principles and energies of love, acceptance, openness, and trust." If you can see the bravery it takes to be open, heart-centered, and rooted in love throughout a world engulfed in fear, steeped in pain, and overwhelmed by trauma, then you are beginning to remember why you came to help. Matt Kahn. As we begin this incarnation, we all want to be appreciated and valued by others. But instead of instigating our own beliefs and behaviors, we reproduce the beliefs and behaviors of the group. even when it's not in alignment with the integrity of our own soul. And because of this attitude towards life, one then develops distortion upon distortion until finally one is all tied up in a knot of limiting beliefs, fears, judgments, confusion, and rejection of self. These distortions may then stick with you for the rest of the incarnation, or until you finally come to a cliff of despair. Looking back at the crowd and at the life one can no longer maintain, the only path forward is the terrifying ledge of the unknown. It is then that one must take a leap of faith, throwing out one's arms to face one's inescapable death. Only this is not a real death, but the death of the personality shell, or you could say, the death of the ego. It's a very painful experience when one's very beliefs about oneself and life suddenly begin to dissolve, or in an instant are annihilated. But in its place, humility, openness, and the student ready to learn are born. And now one can begin the journey of understanding, undistorting, and true self-awareness. Distortions, confusion, and conditioning that seem so real for so long, yet at the core of you always remains that true self, waiting for you to take up the conscious work. And now let's talk about the self-reflective work through the mirroring effect. I'm sure you've all heard throughout your life that you need to love yourself more, or that you need to just let it go. But no one actually knows where to begin or how. I also didn't. I spent the bulk of my life in therapy groups and devouring self-help books. And although I learned many helpful things, I still could never quite get a grasp on healing. It always eluded me. It wasn't until I finally began to recognize that all is one that my healing really started to come about. That said, this next part may be a bit abstract, so be sure to use your own discernment. What doesn't resonate with you at this time, then set it aside for another day or discard it altogether. It may not be your path of choosing. Should you wish to continue forward, then do yourself a favor by being open-minded, having childlike wonder, and allow yourself to explore consciousness. It's your soul's birthright, after all. Now I would like you to imagine for a moment that the Creator is infinity, energy, and consciousness itself. Thus you could say intelligent infinity or intelligent energy, or, like it's ironically called in the scientific community, energy and information. Now imagine that infinity, which has no form, no contrast, no separateness, no manyness, just pure awareness, has a thought. And that thought is that it wishes to know itself. But how can it when there's no backdrop, nothing to experience, no other selves? It's just pure, undifferentiated energy and basic awareness. Then, having this thought of knowing itself, the creation is born. And since all there truly is infinity, energy, and consciousness, then this being must create from such elements. Thus, the distortions from infinity are brought into being. Free will, love, light, vibration, sound, movement, rhythm, time, space, magnetism, cause, effect, order, disorder, etc., etc., and the distortions go on infinitely. These distortions then also create entire fields of study such as physics, mathematics, chemistry, biology, technology, psychology, etc., etc. There's only one energy which takes infinite forms. And because of free will, you are able to experience and contemplate all of these things mentioned. When it comes down to it, existence is a giant contemplation after all. The Creator splits off portions of itself, and thus you were born. Then this creator realizes that it cannot possibly know itself unless it gives each being its own free will. Now, with your own free will, you're thrust out into the creation and into the mystery. Then you go on a journey, getting as far away from the creator as seemingly possible, thanks to the aspects gifted to you, such as the ego and its ability to create an experience of separation and isolation. This separateness was aided by a veil that was created to separate your conscious mind from your unconscious mind. The conscious mind, which exists in physicality, and the unconscious mind, which exists in the metaphysical. Your mind exists both in space-time and in time-space. Then given endless options of archetypes, which are universal characters, symbolic patterns of behavior, themes, and roles to play, such as mother, father, child, hero, villain, the ruler, the lover, the explorer, the normal, the comedian, the ignorant, etc., etc., along with the primary archetypal principles of the mind, such as experience, transformation, catalyst, matrix, potentiator, or you could say energizer, and the great way. Then there comes you, the mind-body-spirit complex. Like unto a transceiver, you receive and transmit information. You collect and share data. So all is evolving alongside you to some degree. You are the interface with all of the creation. And in the process of making choices out of forgetfulness, separateness, contrast, catalyst, responsibility, desire, and free will, the creator gets to know itself more. Because there is no other entity that is exactly like you. You have shaped and refined yourself ever so subtly over eons of time. And thanks to the creator's desire to know itself more, you get to live, move, love, and have your being. It's as though inevitable that you were created. That's how important and absolute you are. You are a citizen of eternity and an expression of the Creator, making your way back home by way of awareness and vibration, vibrating more and more in resonance with the one infinite Creator. For eons of time, through the process of choosing, you have refined yourself to be dialed in right where you are. Your particular vibration, your stream of consciousness, your level of awareness, or you could say rather, your level of remembering who you are. And having this awareness, suddenly the most profound and beautiful thing is realized. You get to go through the same process as the Creator, whereby you get to know yourself. Did you not come to be who you are today through a long process of contrast, reflection, contemplation, and refinement? And once you recognize that you and the Creator are one, then you subsequently recognize that all are the Creator and that all are you. When each drop of water comes from the same ocean, when each spark comes from the same flame, when each plant, insect, animal, and human body comes from the same earth, when each planet comes from the same universe, then what better place for the Creator to hide itself than in the eyes of a friend, parent, or child? Enlightenment is when the wave realizes it is the ocean. Zen proverb. I have healed many of my biggest wounds and life traps from greater and greater states of this awareness alone. By opening, softening, being rigorously honest with myself and reaching deeper and deeper acceptance, the blocks that were installed in me began to dissolve, and I experienced myself, others, and the universe from a new set of vibrations consisting of energy and information which can heal even the most persistent wounds. However, Once I healed some of my biggest core wounds, then I discovered that I still have much more healing needed that can only come from the reflective work provided by other selves. That is to say that, when we are all one, then each person is like a mirror, reflecting back to us what's inside us. Sometimes the reflection is joy, love, beauty, compassion. Other times it's fear, hate, anger, shame, lack, and separation. We can only recognize another's badness, darkness, pain when we have it within ourselves. We can only recognize another's goodness, light, love, compassion when we have it within ourselves. So at some point on a soul's long journey away from the Creator, the being begins to become more and more conscious, more self-aware. The being begins to wake up. At that point, a U-turn is made, and you begin the journey back to the Creator through the process of discovering and remembering. How astonishing and brilliant! This is the solo journey that each being will at some point embark upon. You, yourself, are the truth and the way. You, who enjoys puzzles, riddles, mysteries, and adventure. You, who's beginning to realize your distortions from truth, and thus starting the process of healing. Healing one's wounds, one's impulses, one's confusions, one's separateness, one's perspectives. And thus you come to the mirroring effect that only other selves can offer. Indeed, each person has a profound ability to affect what another being will see when he/she looks into the mirror of you. Quote, remembering that all are one, then your mirror has a strong effect depending upon what you are presenting or dwelling upon within yourself. It is a complex formula and puzzle, refined by gazing into the mirror of each other. This creates a persona in the way that a being thinks of oneself, and therefore expresses oneself. If a being does not do any work in consciousness, then the mirror is as it is. And that which another being sees while gazing into your mirror is the reflective quality of which you have met yourself and healed. Or the mirror is of all the prejudices, biases, judgments, wounds, and fears that are the mirror of you. Therefore, if you are an unconscious, wounded being, the backing of your mirror will tell a certain story. Ra in the Law of One. Do you reflect the ugliness, hatred, darkness, and fears in another? Or do you reflect the goodness, beauty, and love in another? Flipping this, do others reflect the goodness, beauty, and love in you? Or do they reflect the negativity, darkness, and fears in you? The work is about becoming more and more conscious and sussing out the imbalances, blockages, contradictions, disharmonious perspectives, and fears within oneself by way of the reflective quality of other selves. Note: to learn how to balance the psychological and emotional polarities within you more, check out my video on the catalyst. When doing this work, always remember that fear is the birthplace of all negative distortions. Thus, it's where the work is needed. And it's important to know that the majority of fear is illusion. You will come to face many experiences where you can't fully grasp this concept, and the fear will seem so convincing, but once you walk the landscape of your own mind and start to unravel the knot of fear, you will be amazed to find that there is ultimately, always, only love, connection, and oneness. So remember, you can't possibly see another person or situation clearly due to how fear, shame, or anger clouds and narrows the mind's views and options, and restricts the mind-body-spirit complex's ability to effectively deal with difficulty or the ability to relate with others. Furthermore, when you are fearful, shame-based, or angry, you are no longer in a present and mindful relationship with the other. You are ultimately in a violent and toxic relationship with yourself. And the mirror that the other self is holding up is showing you that when you are shaming, gaslighting, or angry at something or someone, it's actually mysteriously because you are afraid and neglectful of something within you. Therefore, your impulse is to blame, manipulate, control, and project, not knowing that it's actually something within you that you haven't understood, forgiven, accepted, healed, and integrated yet. In becoming more and more honest, understanding, and transparent, one allows the light of their being to shine through them ever more clearly and radiantly. In my own experience with healing, I've found that all healing comes first from understanding, then acceptance can come about. And once you accept one thing that had your focus and energy all tied up, then you will come to a small door, and then another, and another, where each door will offer you another opportunity for understanding, acceptance, and healing. We attract and resonate with others from our place of poverty, fear, insecurity, shame, and other internal dialogues. The mated couple are the perfect mirror for each other, the perfect teacher. They reflect back to one another where they are stuck, where they need healing. Jealousy, unworthiness, laziness, unavailability, apathy, narcissism, anger, neediness, the beggar, the controlling, the submissive, the lack of control, the impatient, the foolish, the unheard, the desperate, etc., etc. And without the other's reflection, you would have no clue that these things are inside of you, except for what the mirror of the creation holds up for you to see. All is a mirror to a certain degree. Even the person who cuts you off in traffic, or the dog groomer faced with an unruly dog, or rainstorm at a long-anticipated important event. When unconscious, unawakened, then we don't want to face the pain. We don't want to face ourselves. So we point our finger, complain, control, become the victim, and project. You don't make me feel desired. You don't make me feel happy. You don't make me feel loved. You don't make me feel alive. But nobody makes you feel. They simply mirror back to you the feelings, the wounds, the beliefs, the distortions, the confusion, the separateness that are stuck inside you. The conscious seeker begins to see this and takes accountability for the self, one's own healing, and is humbled time and time again, which brings about true connection with the self and with others, and one further embodies love. This is why I talk so much about the ego, the personality shell, so that people can start to become aware of the systems that control them, and so that people can begin the work of being rigorously honest with themselves and break free from the protective personality that ultimately does the opposite of what you truly desire. This shield that unwittingly created a deep rejection of self, and thus disharmony and disconnection with other selves and the universe. A quote from the Aaron Quo dialogues helps to better clarify this new way of relating with others and with the self. As long as there is that within you that feels unacceptable, then you will judge the same to be unacceptable in others. I am not denying that anger causes you pain and that your son's anger causes him pain, but he will need to work with that pain on his own. So the best gift you can give him is first to begin to look closer into your own anger and to reach a point where you can truly accept your own anger. Then you can begin to accept his anger, so that when he is angry, he still feels love from you. In this way, he can begin to let that anger drop away, to be honest with himself about it, and to understand it more clearly. You're starting to get it, aren't you? When we judge that which is inside us. So perhaps our judgments are not so much where the other needs healing, but perhaps it's where we need healing. And when I say judging, there's a difference between assessment and judgment with disgust, hate, with the separate self that condemns. In the past, due to the nature of addiction, I developed an unbearable amount of shame. I then lived from this basis of shame. Shame became my spiritual practice. I took myself too seriously. I clung on to people and things to provide me with a sense of worth. Furthermore, clinging to people and things gave me a sense of identity. Should the thing or person suddenly be gone, it triggered my deep rejection wound, and my whole world would come crashing down. Out of shame, I presented myself in a certain light on social media, in the hopes that people would see that there's more to me than just my battles with addiction. I also used to talk people's ears off, as if secretly saying to them, please accept me, when really I was secretly saying to myself, please accept me. This is the mirroring effect. Everyone is telling you the hidden story of them. Everyone is also showing themselves exactly where they hurt and where they are stuck. When doing this work, it's important to always remember that you can't possibly see the truth when identified with fear. Fear distorts the perception, which entirely misinterprets what is actually transpiring in any situation. Fear is quite seductive and convincing. It can overtake the self, pulling you into a kind of hypnosis of survival, of separateness, of aloneness, furthermore of rejection of other, and ultimately rejection of self. The whole world itself can be colored through the lens of fear should you take that route. For there are things to fear from the standpoint of an entity that is identified with its body and with its thoughts. An entity that has forgotten its nature as a boundless, eternal being of and forevermore, absolutely secure within the dream of the Creator. If I can accept my own fears, my own anger, then I can understand that those fears and anger in another self are only because that's the place where they are separated from the love and understanding within them. I see myself in them and them in me. And once I start to heal those distortions in me, I can then be a better reflection for healing to take place in another. And slowly, over time, when doing this work, the most profound and amazing thing occurs. I come to know and love all others because I know and love me. I come to know and love the Creator because I know and love me. As Ram Dass once said, we're all just walking each other home. Now go forth and truly enjoy your being. See the creation as a giant school, complete with lessons and courses. View your difficulties not as a victim, but as catalysts for learning, growth, balance, and to become more heart-centered. Rise above the separate self. Get a bird's eye view. Leave no stone unturned and allow yourself to explore consciousness. Utilize the mirroring effect and always remember that you are the truth and the way. There's no dogma involved. You are the truth, including your very level of awareness and beingness in each and every moment.
Father Ocean, hear my song. You're the wave I was made from. Take me back to where we once began. Ocean Father, I was wrong. Years I followed just the sun. Now I see your darkness holds the key. I close my eyes and I begin to see. When